I still remember the exact moment my entire world collapsed. The boardroom fell silent as my father announced that my brother Travis would inherit everything, the entire company, our family fortune. My life's work, all handed to someone who could barely be bothered to show up. I stood there, presentation binder in hand, thinking this was finally my moment of recognition after 15 years of sacrifice. Instead, I watched my father place his hand on my brother's shoulder with pride I had never seen directed at me. "The future of Patterson Construction belongs to my son," he said, as if I was invisible. That day, I walked out of the empire I had built with my own hands. But what they never expected was that walking away would be the first step in a move that would flip their entire world upside down. Growing up, I spent countless weekends trailing behind my father Jack as he built Patterson Construction from the ground up. While other kids played at the park, I was learning to read blueprints and watching concrete foundations transform into buildings that changed the skyline of our city. By 12, I was designing building models in my bedroom, meticulously crafting miniature versions of what I imagined our company could build one day. My father would occasionally glance at them, offer a brief nod, then return to his paperwork. "You've got a good eye, Carolyn," he'd say, "but this business is tough. Not for everyone." I understood the subtext, not for a girl, but that only made me more determined. By 16, I was visiting job sites asking questions that impressed even the most seasoned project managers. I soaked up knowledge like concrete absorbs water, becoming a sponge for every aspect of the construction industry. Travis, my brother, who was 2 years older, couldn't have been more different. While I was studying structural integrity, he was studying the inside of beer bottles at college parties. He changed majors 3 times before dropping out entirely in his junior year. "College is for people who need to prove themselves," he'd say, lounging on our parents' couch. I already know who I am. What he was lazy. But my father never saw it that way. Travis is finding himself he'd defend while expecting nothing less than perfection from me. I pursued dual degrees in business administration and architecture, graduating with honors, despite my father suggesting that maybe a teaching degree would be more practical for a woman. He attended my graduation, but spent most of it answering business calls. When I approached him about joining Patterson Construction after college, he hired me as an administrative assistant. Not project manager, not junior executive, administrative assistant. "Everyone starts at the bottom, Carolyn," he said, though Travis had a vice president title despite having no qualifications or responsibilities. I didn't complain. Instead, I outworked everyone. I arrived first, left last, and volunteered for projects nobody wanted. Within a year, I had moved to project coordination. By year 3, I was managing small projects independently. The employees respected me because I had earned it, unlike Travis, who floated in and out of the office when it suited him. My breakthrough came when the Riverfront Development project started falling apart. It was a $30 million contract that was 6 months behind schedule and $4 million over budget. The client was threatening to pull out, which would have devastated our reputation and finances. "Let me take over," I told my father during a crisis meeting while Travis was conspicuously absent on a ski trip. "This isn't a training exercise, Carolyn. We need someone experienced," my father replied. "And where is that person? Because whoever was experienced enough to run it into the ground isn't fixing it now." My boldness surprised him. After a long pause, he agreed, but with a warning. "If you fail, there's nothing I can do to save your position here." I didn't fail. I restructured the entire project management system, negotiated with suppliers, and worked directly with the architecture team to find cost-effective alternatives that actually improved the design. 3 months later, we were back on schedule and under the revised budget. The client was so impressed they recommended us for 2 additional projects. At the completion ceremony, my father actually put his arm around me. The Patterson touch, he called it to the clients, as if my success was somehow genetic rather than the result of endless 70-hour work weeks. The company started giving me larger projects, and I delivered every time. The employees began coming to me with problems instead of my father or the other executives. I had earned their trust through competence rather than nepotism. Then came the financial crisis that nearly destroyed everything. While reviewing our quarterly reports, I discovered discrepancies that made no sense. Digging deeper, I found major irregularities that pointed to our CFO making risky investments with company funds to cover personal losses. We were 3 weeks away from being unable to make payroll. I worked through 4 straight nights, developing a financial recovery plan. I presented it to my father privately, showing him both the problem and my solution. "How long have you known about this?" he asked, face ashen. 2 weeks. "I wanted to bring you facts, not suspicions." He implemented my plan, immediately fired the CFO, and reorganized the financial department according to my recommendations. Within 6 months, we had recovered. Within a year, company profits had doubled. I thought this would be the moment my father truly saw me as his successor. Instead, after the company-wide meeting announcing our record profits, I overheard him talking to Travis in his office as I came to deliver some additional reports. "We need to keep her happy until we can replace her," my father said. "Find someone willing to work for less who can handle her responsibilities." I froze outside the door, reports clutched to my chest. "Isn't she doing a good job, though?" Travis asked, surprising me with even this modest defense. "Of course she is. She's a Patterson. But when it's time to hand over the reins, it needs to be to you. You're my son, my legacy. Carolyn will get married eventually, and her priorities will change. We just need her until we find the right person to prepare you for leadership." I didn't deliver the reports. I walked back to my office, closed the door, and for the first time since joining the company, I cried at my desk. Despite the devastating conversation I'd overheard, I refused to give up everything I'd built. I dried my tears and developed a new approach. If they wouldn't recognize my value willingly, I'd make myself so indispensable they couldn't ignore it. Over the next 2 years, I essentially became the chief operating officer without the title or compensation. I handled daily operations, client relationships, project oversight, and strategic planning, while my father took longer vacations, and Travis continued his pattern of sporadic appearances and zero contributions. The employees knew who was really running things. Janet from accounting would roll her eyes whenever Travis strolled in at 11 reeking of expensive cologne and last night's whiskey. "The prince has arrived," she'd mutter, not bothering to lower her voice. Project managers requested me specifically for problem solving. Clients asked for my cell number rather than the official company contact. I developed a reputation throughout the industry for innovation and reliability. When I introduced a new modular construction technique that cut project times by 20% while improving quality, industry publications took notice. Patterson Construction started winning bids against competitors, twice our size, because of methods I had implemented. My personal life, meanwhile, withered away. My college friends stopped calling after I missed too many gatherings. A promising relationship with David, an architect from a partner firm, fizzled out after I canceled our weekend getaway for the 3rd time due to company emergencies. My apartment became little more than a place to shower and occasionally sleep. "You need balance," Carolyn, my friend Alicia, urged during one of our increasingly rare lunch dates. "The company is consuming you." "It's just temporary," I assured her, checking my phone for emails. "Once Dad sees what I've built, things will change." But the warning signs kept multiplying. Travis began showing up at client meetings I had arranged, contributing nothing but taking credit in front of our father. "Great meeting today," he'd say afterward. I think they really responded to my approach. My father would beam with pride while I bit my tongue. The Westlake Commercial Center, a $60 million project I had secured through months of relationship building, became Travis's project in company communications, despite him attending only the signing ceremony. I confronted my father about it privately. "It's important for clients to see Travis as leadership," he explained. "You're doing wonderful work, Carolyn, but the Patterson name will continue through my son." "I'm a Patterson too," I reminded him. "You know what I mean. Someday you'll have your husband's name, a family." I didn't bother explaining that my dedication to his company had made that increasingly unlikely. The situation reached a turning point when Harold Jensen, CEO of Jensen Development and our biggest potential client, refused to move forward with a $100 million contract unless I personally managed the project. "No offense to Travis or you, Jack," he said during our lunch meeting, "but we've worked with Carolyn before. She's the reason we're considering Patterson Construction." My father looked like he'd swallowed something sour, but agreed. Later that day, he called me into his office. "You've done an excellent job cultivating relationships," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "But you need to include Travis more. Start copying him on all communications with Jensen. Take him to the meetings." Harold specifically asked that I manage the project, I reminded him. "And you will. Travis will just be learning from you." I knew what this meant. I would do the work, Travis would get the credit. But the Jensen project was too important to our company's future for me to object. Around this time, my father's health began showing signs of strain. He tired more easily, sometimes losing focus during meetings. I noticed him taking medication when he thought no one was watching. Nothing was officially communicated, but as the daughter who paid attention, I knew something was wrong. The logical step would have been to officially promote me to COO or president, formalizing the role I was already performing. Instead, my father began bringing Travis to more high-level meetings and board presentations, positioning him visibly while I continued handling the actual work. One Tuesday afternoon, Sarah from legal stopped by my office and closed the door. Sarah and I had started at Patterson on the same day 7 years earlier, and had developed a friendship based on mutual respect. "I shouldn't be telling you this," she said, voice low, "but there have been meetings about succession planning. Your father, Travis, the company lawyers, and the board of directors. 3 meetings in the past month." My stomach tightened, and I wasn't invited. Not only that, Sarah continued, but when Roger suggested including you, your father explicitly said no. They're discussing transition plans for the company's future. Carolyn, they're planning to sideline you completely. I thanked Sarah for her loyalty, then sat alone in my office until long after everyone had gone home. The glittering city lights spread out below our top-floor office, many from buildings I had helped create. I had given everything to this company, sacrificed any semblance of personal life, all for a future that was never intended to include me. That night, I made 2 decisions: first, to confront my father directly, and second, to start protecting myself in case the conversation went exactly as I feared it would. The next morning, I arrived at my father's office before his secretary. When he walked in and saw me waiting, his momentary surprise quickly shifted to resignation. "We need to talk about succession planning," I said without preamble. He settled heavily into his chair. "Who told you?" "Does it matter? What matters is that you're making decisions about my future without including me in the conversation. These are preliminary discussions, Carolyn. Nothing has been decided." "Then why exclude me? I'm running daily operations. I've doubled our profits. I secured the Jensen contract. What more do I need to do to earn a seat at the table?" He sighed, rubbing his temples. "You've done exceptional work. No one is disputing that. But Travis is my son. The Patterson name and legacy." "I am a Patterson," I interrupted, my voice rising despite my efforts to remain calm. "It's different and you know it. Travis needs this company. It's his birthright. You're capable of succeeding anywhere." The irony was staggering. My competence was being used against me, while Travis's incompetence was his qualification. I left without resolving anything, my father's vague reassurances ringing hollow. Over the next month, I began documenting everything. I compiled reports of my contributions, financial impact assessments of my initiatives, and emails from clients, specifically requesting my involvement. I wasn't sure what I was preparing for, but instinct told me protection was necessary. During this time, I discovered that Travis had been systematically taking credit for my work in reports to the board. Quarterly presentations included my projects under his supervision portfolio. Strategy documents I'd authored appeared with his name. When I confronted him, he shrugged it off. "Dad asked me to consolidate the reports. Does it really matter whose name is on what?" "It matters when you're building your case for leadership using my accomplishments," I replied. "Don't be so dramatic, sis. We're all family here." Family. The word had become bitter in my mouth. Despite these undercurrents, I continued performing at my highest level. The Jensen government contract, $50 million for a series of municipal buildings, was finalized under my guidance. It was the largest single contract in company history and would secure our financial stability for years. I developed a comprehensive 5-year expansion plan based on the reputation this project would establish, assuming I'd be leading the company through this next growth phase. 2 days after signing the Jensen contract, my father announced a special company meeting to discuss the future direction of Patterson Construction. Hope flickered briefly. Perhaps my contributions would finally receive formal recognition. Perhaps the title and authority to match my responsibilities would be forthcoming. The night before the announcement, we had a family dinner at my father's house, a rare occurrence given our usual focus on business rather than family connection. My father was uncharacteristically animated, refilling wine glasses and reminiscing about the early days of the company. "Tomorrow marks a new chapter," he said, raising his glass. "To the future of Patterson Construction." I smiled, allowing myself to believe this might be his way of preparing me for public recognition. Travis was unusually quiet, scrolling through his phone and contributing little to the conversation. The next day, the entire company gathered in the conference center. My father stood at the podium, looking both frail and determined, Travis beside him, wearing a suit that still had the store creases visible, clearly purchased for this occasion. After 35 years building this company, my father began. It's time to announce the succession plan that will carry Patterson Construction into the future. My heart raced as I waited for my name, my role, my future. My son, Travis Patterson, will assume the role of president and CEO effective immediately, with complete ownership transfer to follow upon my retirement next year. The room spun slightly. Beside me, Janet from accounting gasped softly. Across the room, project managers exchanged glances. Travis stepped forward, waving like a politician at a rally. Additionally, my father continued all family assets, including real estate holdings and investment accounts, will transfer to Travis as the Patterson family heir. Not just the company, but everything. Our entire family fortune. The inheritance from both parents funneled exclusively to Travis. When the announcement concluded, stunned employees offered awkward congratulations to Travis while shooting sympathetic glances my way. My father approached his expression a mixture of relief and discomfort. "You'll continue as director of operations, of course," he said, as if offering a generous concession. "Your contribution is still valuable." Why, I managed to ask, professional mask still somehow in place. "Travis needs the security more than you do," he replied. "You're strong, capable. You'd be fine without it, Travis." "Wouldn't." The truth finally spoken aloud. My competence was my disqualification. Travis's lifelong pattern of irresponsibility was being rewarded with everything I had helped build. I nodded mechanically and turned away, but Travis caught my arm. "No hard feelings, right, sis? I'll need your help more than ever." Something in his expression made me pause. A smug satisfaction that seemed out of proportion even for this moment. "What do you mean?" "Well, you're not the only one who's been contributing. That modular construction technique you developed, Dad, helped me file the patents under the company name last month. And I've already sold exclusive rights to Westbrook Development." He named our largest competitor. $20 million licensing deal. Not bad, right? I stared at him in shock. The innovation I had developed through years of research and testing that had given us a competitive edge throughout the industry, sold to our chief rival without my knowledge or consent. "You knew about this?" I asked my father, who had the decency to look uncomfortable. "It was a business decision. The company owned the intellectual property." "The company, which you just gave to Travis." "Carolyn, be reasonable. This benefits everyone." But it didn't. It benefited Travis, who had contributed nothing. It betrayed me, who had given everything. And in that moment, something broke inside me. The loyal daughter, the dedicated executive, the family member who had always believed that merit would eventually be recognized. I walked out of the conference room without another word, straight to my office, and began to plan my exit. For 2 weeks following the announcement, I maintained a perfect professional facade. I arrived at the standard time instead of my usual 2 hours early. I attended required meetings, responded to emails promptly, and avoided both my father and Travis whenever possible. Employees watched me with concern and curiosity, wondering when I would break. I wouldn't give anyone that satisfaction. Behind the scenes, I was systematically documenting everything. Every project, every client relationship, every process I had developed. Not to sabotage the company, but to protect myself and create a clean transition. I wouldn't leave chaos in my wake, no matter how justified it might feel. Travis, meanwhile, wasted no time asserting his new authority. He moved into the corner office that had been my father's, decorated it with absurdly expensive modern art, and began scheduling meetings with our key clients. Meetings he was consistently underprepared for. "Can you put together some talking points for the Davidson meeting?" he asked, stopping by my office doorway without entering. "Just the highlights. I want to sound knowledgeable, but not too in the weeds." The Davidson project has 16 different phases, with specific contractual obligations for each. There are no highlights version. "Just do what you can," he said with a dismissive wave. "And copy my assistant, not me directly. I'm streamlining my communications." 3 days after that conversation, Melissa from the project management team appeared in my doorway, face tight with anxiety. "Travis just told the Davidson team we can accelerate Phase 3 by 2 months. That's impossible with the permitting requirements." This became a pattern. Travis making promises we couldn't keep. Employees coming to me to fix the problems. Me working overtime to prevent complete disaster while receiving neither credit nor authority. A week later, I discovered something that crystallized my decision. While organizing documentation on my past projects, I found that all my design innovations and process improvements had been systematically transferred to company ownership, not unusual in itself, but the timing was suspicious. Checking the legal filings, I saw that everything had been transferred 3 months before the succession announcement, right when those secret meetings began. They had been planning this betrayal, meticulously securing my intellectual contributions before pushing me aside. That evening, 4 key project managers asked to meet me for dinner away from the office. Marcus, our most experienced manager, who had been with the company for 20 years, served as their spokesperson. "We know what's happening is wrong," he said simply. "Half the staff is updating their resumes. Travis has no idea what he's doing, and your father isn't stepping in. What's your plan, Carolyn?" "Whatever it is, many of us want to be part of it." Their loyalty was touching but complicated my situation. "I don't have a plan yet," I admitted, "but I appreciate your support more than I can say." The truth was, I was still struggling with the emotional reality. This wasn't just a career setback, it was family betrayal of the deepest kind. 15 years of sacrifice dismissed. My professional contributions stolen. My future security transferred to someone who had never earned it. I decided to make one final attempt to reach my father. I invited him to lunch at the small Italian restaurant where we used to celebrate company milestones in the early days, hoping the setting might soften his perspective. I'm not asking for everything I said after we'd ordered. I'm asking for fair recognition of my contributions. Joint leadership. A division of responsibilities based on our actual skills. My father twirled pasta around his fork without looking up. Travis needs to establish himself as the sole leader. Shared authority would undermine that. And my future. Everything I've built. You'll always have a place in the company, Carolyn. A place. Not ownership. Not real authority. He finally met my eyes. This is business. Sometimes difficult decisions must be made for the greater good. Whose greater good? Not mine. Not the company's. Just Travis's. You've always been the strong one. Travis needs this structure, this purpose. So I'm being punished for not being a failure. He flinched at the harshness, but didn't deny it. We finished the meal in strained silence, and I knew it was truly over. The next day I began preparing my resignation letter. I had no intention of working under Travis's authority, watching him dismantle everything I had built through incompetence and entitlement. But I would exit with dignity and professionalism. As I was finalizing the letter, a knock came at my door. Richard Cooper, my father's oldest friend and co-founder of the company who had retired 5 years earlier, stood there looking uncomfortable. "Got a minute?" he asked. Richard had always treated me with respect, recognizing my contributions, even when my father didn't. He settled into the chair across from me with the stiffness of his 70 years. "Your father is making the biggest mistake of his life," he said without preamble. I told him so directly, but Jack can be stubborn when he thinks he's protecting family. "He's protecting Travis, not family," I corrected. "I'm family too." "I know, which is why I'm here. I've been watching what you've built in this company. Your innovations, your leadership. When you leave, and I know you will, I have connections who would be very interested in talking to you." His confidence in my abilities was the first genuine recognition I'd received since the announcement. "Thank you, Richard. That means a lot." After he left, I returned to my resignation letter with renewed purpose. I would leave, but I would leave towards something, not just away from betrayal. Before finalizing everything, I decided to review the contract for the Jensen project one last time. As the person who had negotiated every detail, I wanted to ensure a clean handover. What I found sent ice through my veins. Travis had already amended the delivery schedule, promising completion dates that shaved 3 months off our carefully planned timeline, an impossible acceleration that would require cutting corners on safety and quality. Worse, he had committed to this schedule in writing to the Government Oversight Committee, creating a legally binding modification that could trigger fraud investigations if we failed to deliver. He had effectively created a time bomb that could destroy the company's reputation, finances, and possibly lead to criminal charges, all to make himself look good in the short term. I printed the modified contract, staring at Travis's signature with a mixture of anger and disbelief. This wasn't just incompetence, it was recklessness with other people's livelihoods. The 150 employees of Patterson Construction deserved better than to have their futures gambled by someone who had never understood the value of hard work. That night, I finalized my resignation letter effective 2 weeks from delivery. I would provide transition documentation for all my projects, train my replacement if requested, and exit with my professional reputation intact. What I wouldn't do was warn them about the Jensen contract time bomb. That would be Travis's first lesson in real leadership consequences. My resignation created exactly the reaction I had anticipated. My father called an emergency meeting expression oscillating between anger and panic. Travis made vague promises about restructuring compensation if I would reconsider. The executive team looked physically ill at the prospect of losing the person who had actually been running daily operations. I remained polite but firm. 2 weeks' notice. Comprehensive transition documents. No negotiation. Word spread quickly throughout the company. Project managers stopped by my office with business cards and private messages of support. Clients called to express concern when they heard rumors of my departure. I assured everyone that Patterson Construction would continue to meet their needs, though I didn't entirely believe it myself. My father made one final attempt the day before my departure, appearing at my nearly empty office late in the evening. "What will it take to keep you?" he asked, looking older than I had ever seen him. "Name your price." "It was never about money," I replied, packing the last of my personal items into a box. "It was about recognition, respect, family. Those things can't be negotiated now. We are still family, Carolyn." I paused, really looking at him, this man I had spent my life trying to impress, whose approval had shaped my entire career path. "Biology makes us related," I said finally. "Trust and mutual respect make us family. We lost that when you and Travis went behind my back, took credit for my work, and planned to replace me all along." He had no response to that. He simply watched as I packed the last photograph, my college graduation, and closed the box. The first month after leaving Patterson Construction was both liberating and terrifying. For the first time since college, I had no schedule, no responsibilities, no company emergencies interrupting my sleep. I took a trip to the coast, spent a week in a beachfront cottage, and remembered what it felt like to watch the sunrise without checking my phone for emails. I reconnected with friends who had almost given up on me. Alicia organized a welcome back to the land of the living dinner with our college group. David, the architect I had once dated, reached out for coffee, and we cautiously began rebuilding what my workaholic tendencies had destroyed years ago. "You seem different," he observed during our third meeting. "More present." "I am," I realized. I spent 15 years holding my breath, waiting for recognition that was never going to come. I'm finally breathing again. The healing wasn't just personal. Richard Cooper kept his promise, introducing me to investors who had followed my career from afar. A venture capitalist who specialized in construction innovation invited me to lunch, asking pointed questions about my modular design system that Travis had sold to our competitors. "That was just version 1, I told him. "I've had ideas for version 2 for years, but never had time to develop them." His eyes lit up. "Would you have time now with proper funding and support?" 6 weeks after walking away from Patterson Construction with nothing but my reputation and knowledge, I founded Cornerstone Innovations, a specialized consulting firm focused on sustainable construction methods and project efficiency. We started small, just me, an assistant, and 2 project managers who had left Patterson shortly after I did. Our first contract came from a mid-sized developer who had worked with me previously and trusted my expertise. The second came through Richard's connections. By month 3, we had enough work to justify hiring 3 more people, including a brilliant young architect with fresh perspectives on my modular system redesign. I was building something new, not in reaction to betrayal, but as a positive expression of my own vision. A company where contribution was valued over nepotism, where innovation was nurtured rather than exploited. That's when Travis began his campaign against me. It started with subtle comments to industry contacts questioning my departure. Family disagreement, emotional decision, taking time to find herself. Nothing directly slanderous, but implications that painted me as unstable or unprofessional. When that didn't slow my new company's growth, he became more direct. Potential clients would suddenly back out of meetings admitting that Travis had contacted them directly. Suppliers who worked with both companies reported pressure to choose sides. My father remained conspicuously silent throughout Travis's campaign, neither supporting nor restraining his tactics. I refused to engage in the same behavior. When clients asked about Patterson Construction, I spoke factually about my years of experience there without criticism. When asked directly about Travis, I simply said I wish him success in his new role and changed the subject. This approach resonated with industry professionals who could read between the lines. Cornerstone's reputation for integrity and excellence grew steadily despite Travis's attempts at sabotage. 7 months after my departure, Cornerstone had grown to 12 employees with contracts spanning 3 states. We were developing proprietary improvements to construction efficiency that went far beyond my original modular system, with patent applications filed under shared company ownership, my way of ensuring no one would experience what had happened to me. That's when Andrew Bennett, an investor with extensive holdings in the construction industry, requested a meeting. He arrived at our modest offices with an air of contained urgency, asking to speak privately. "I'm on the board of several construction-adjacent companies," he began once we were alone, "including suppliers who work extensively with Patterson Construction." My stomach tightened at the mention of the company I had left behind. Cornerstone has no interest in interfering with those relationships. "That's not why I'm here," Bennett said, placing a folder on my desk. "I'm here because I've seen concerning financial documents from Patterson, specifically irregularities in billing practices on government contracts." He opened the folder to reveal copies of invoices, change orders, and bank transfers related to the Jensen project, the very contract I had secured before leaving. These appear to show systematic overbilling, with funds being diverted to personal accounts. "I believe your brother is embezzling from his own company while simultaneously defrauding government clients." I stared at the documents pieces falling into place. Travis's sudden expensive cars and downtown apartment, the accelerated timeline promises that would necessitate cutting corners. The missing funds explained both. "Why bring this to me?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Because if this continues, it won't just be Patterson Construction that suffers. It will impact suppliers, partners, and hundreds of employees. And because I believe you're the only person who might be able to address this without triggering an industry-wide scandal." I closed the folder, mind racing with implications. Travis wasn't just incompetent, he was actively criminal. His actions could destroy not only my father's legacy, but potentially implicate innocent employees and partners. "I'll need time to consider the appropriate response," I told Bennett. After he left, I sat alone in my office until well after sunset, the folder unopened on my desk, feeling the weight of a decision I had never wanted to face. The evidence of Travis's embezzlement presented me with the most difficult moral dilemma of my life. Exposing him would bring a swift and deserved end to his fraudulent leadership, but it would also destroy Patterson Construction, the company my father had built from nothing, that employed people who had been like family to me, and that, despite everything, still held a piece of my heart. I sought legal counsel the next day, meeting with Eleanor Wright, a former prosecutor specializing in white-collar crime. "What are my ethical and legal obligations here?" I asked after explaining the situation without naming the companies involved. "If you have concrete evidence of fraud against government contracts, you have a legal duty to report it," she said. "Failure to do so could potentially make you an accessory after the fact, particularly if the activity continues and causes greater harm. And if the evidence came to me through somewhat questionable channels, the provenance of the information doesn't negate your responsibility once you possess knowledge of a crime." However, she added, seeing my expression, there may be ways to address this that minimize collateral damage while still fulfilling legal obligations. I left her office with a clearer understanding of my options, none of them painless. Over the next week, I monitored industry news closely. Patterson Construction was showing signs of strain visible even to outsiders. Projects were falling behind schedule. A supplier filed a lawsuit over unpaid invoices. Rumors of financial troubles began circulating among industry insiders. The Jensen government contract in particular was floundering. According to my sources, they were already 2 months behind the impossible schedule Travis had promised, with quality issues emerging in completed sections. Government inspectors had flagged multiple code violations, triggering additional oversight that further slowed progress. I was still deliberating my next steps when my phone rang at 11 one evening. My father's name appeared on the screen, the first direct contact since I had cleaned out my office 8 months earlier. "Carolyn," he said, when I answered, his voice thin and strained. "We need to talk." We met the following morning at a coffee shop halfway between our offices. My father had aged years and months, the confident industry leader replaced by a man who looked lost in his own skin. Travis is struggling with the Jensen contract he began without preamble. The Government Oversight Committee is threatening to cancel and pursue damages. I sipped my coffee, waiting for more. The company won't survive if we lose this contract, he continued. Too much of our capital is tied up in it. We need your help. The request I had both expected and dreaded. What exactly are you asking me to do? Come back. Help salvage the project. Your expertise. The expertise you and Travis dismissed. The contributions you failed to value or protect. His eyes dropped to the table. I made a mistake, he admitted, the words clearly difficult for him. I thought I was securing Travis's future, giving him purpose. I never intended to hurt you. Intentions don't change outcomes, Dad. I built a career and identity around that company. I sacrificed everything personal for its success. And you gave it all to someone who never earned it, never appreciated it, and apparently can't maintain it. I know, he said quietly. I know that now. Under different circumstances, this acknowledgement might have meant something. Now it felt hollow, coming only after disaster threatened his legacy. The situation is worse than you think, I told him, deciding in that moment to test his reaction. I have evidence that Travis has been embezzling from the company and defrauding the government on the Jensen contract. My father's face drained of color, but I noticed something telling shock but not disbelief. On some level, he had already suspected. Can this be handled? Internally, he asked finally. Theft from the company, possibly. Fraud against government contracts is federal territory. Prison time, significant fines. Permanent industry blacklisting. He aged another year before my eyes. What can we do? That depends, I replied, gathering my things to leave. On whether you're asking for help saving Travis or saving the company. Because I don't think you can do both anymore. I left him sitting there, giving him time to wrestle with a choice I already knew the answer to. Jack Patterson had always chosen Travis, even at the company's expense. Even at my expense. I didn't expect that to change now. What I didn't anticipate was Travis reaching out directly the next day, requesting a meeting at my office. To what do I owe this honor, I asked when he arrived, making no effort to hide my sarcasm. Travis had lost the cocky demeanor I remembered. He looked nervous, sleep-deprived, and significantly less polished than during his coronation. Dad says you know about the Jensen situation, he began, perching uncomfortably on the edge of a chair. I know about a lot of situations, Travis. You'll need to be more specific. The timeline problems. The quality issues. The government inspectors breathing down our necks. I noticed he didn't mention the embezzlement. Interesting omission. And you're here because we need a solution. Dad thought you might have ideas. I do, I confirmed. But implementing them would require authority I no longer have at Patterson Construction. You could consult. We'd pay whatever. I don't need money. I need control. The only way I would consider helping is if I have complete authority over the Jensen project. No interference from you or Dad. My methods, my timeline, my team. Travis's expression darkened. That's extortion. That's business. You need something I have. I'm naming my price. Dad would never agree to undermine my leadership publicly like that. Then, I guess you'll have to solve your own problems, I replied, standing to end the meeting. Let me know what you decide. He left fuming, but I knew the conversation wasn't over. The Jensen contract was too important to Patterson Construction's survival for pride to stand in the way for long. What I didn't share with either my father or Travis was the plan I had been developing since seeing Bennett's evidence. I had identified a path that could potentially save the company, hold Travis accountable, and restore some measure of justice, though it would require precision timing and leverage I was still accumulating. 3 days after Travis's visit, the business news reported that Patterson Construction's share price had dropped 30% following rumors that the Jensen contract was in jeopardy. An emergency board meeting had been called. That afternoon, Travis issued a public statement blaming the project difficulties on inherited planning problems and subcontractor failures, essentially attempting to shift blame to me and the teams I had previously managed. He specifically rejected outside interference from disgruntled former employees, making his response to my offer clear. I watched the statement with a calmness that surprised even me. Travis was following the exact self-destructive path I had anticipated. Each public misstep strengthened my position for what would come next. The final piece fell into place a week later, when my legal team investigating the full extent of Travis's financial misconduct made a startling discovery about my mother's will. My mother had died when I was 22, shortly before I joined Patterson Construction. Her will had established trusts for both Travis and me, with specific provisions about company ownership should her share of Patterson Construction pass to her children. According to the documents we uncovered, her intention had been for equal distribution between us, a fact my father had apparently circumvented by transferring her shares to himself before executing the will. This legal maneuver, while technically possible, violated the clear intent of my mother's last wishes. More importantly, it gave me grounds for a legitimate legal challenge to Travis's complete ownership. Armed with this information and the evidence of Travis's embezzlement, I was finally ready to implement the plan I had been crafting since walking away from Patterson Construction. The timing couldn't have been better. That same week, the Government Oversight Committee formally issued a notice of default on the Jensen contract, giving Patterson Construction 30 days to remedy the situation or face termination, financial penalties, and potential debarment from future government work. The company that had been my entire life was 30 days from destruction, and I was the only person who could save it on my terms. The news of Patterson Construction's notice of default made headlines throughout the industry. Within hours, my phone was flooded with calls from former colleagues, suppliers, and even competitors seeking insight into what many viewed as the imminent collapse of a once great company. I answered none of them. Instead, I called a meeting with my leadership team at Cornerstone. "I'm considering a significant strategic move," I told the 12 people who had trusted me enough to join my new venture. "It involves Patterson Construction, and I want to be transparent about what I'm planning and why." I explained everything: the evidence of Travis's embezzlement, the legal leverage from my mother's will, and my intention to use both to force a restructuring of Patterson Construction that would save the company while holding Travis accountable. "This isn't about revenge," I concluded. "It's about saving 150 jobs and my father's legacy from someone who never deserved stewardship of either. But it will temporarily divert my attention from Cornerstone, and I won't move forward without your support." Marcus, who had followed me from Patterson to become my operations director, spoke first. "We've built something special here because you lead with integrity. That same integrity is driving this decision. You have my complete support." One by one, each team member expressed similar sentiments. Their trust was humbling and strengthening in equal measure. The next morning, I instructed my legal team to file 2 simultaneous actions: a civil suit challenging the transfer of my mother's company shares, based on her will's clear intent, and a sealed whistleblower complaint to the company say appropriate federal authorities regarding Travis's contract fraud, with a request for investigation, but temporary forbearance on prosecution. With these legal arrows in flight, I requested a meeting with Patterson Construction's full board of directors, my father and Travis. My terms were non-negotiable. The meeting would occur with all parties present, and I would have 1 hour of uninterrupted presentation time. Desperation makes even the proudest people flexible. The meeting was scheduled for the following day. I arrived at Patterson Construction's headquarters for the first time in nearly a year, the familiar lobby, both unchanged and completely different, through the lens of my new perspective. Former colleagues greeted me with a mixture of hope and uncertainty as I made my way to the boardroom. Inside, the tension was palpable. Board members fidgeted nervously, my father looked physically ill, and Travis alternated between false bravado and barely concealed panic. I placed my presentation materials on the table and remained standing. Patterson Construction stands 30 days from bankruptcy, government debarment, and potential criminal prosecution. I began without preamble. I have both the cause of these problems and a potential solution to present today. For the next 50 minutes, I methodically outlined the evidence of Travis's financial misconduct, the fundamental project mismanagement of the Jensen contract, and the legal challenge to ownership based on my mother's will. I presented documentation of each claim with clinical precision, watching Travis's face transition from indignation to fear as the extent of my knowledge became clear. When I finished the diagnosis portion, the room sat in stunned silence. One board member, Amanda Reynolds, finally spoke. "You said you also have a solution." "I do," I confirmed. "A comprehensive plan with 3 components: operational, financial, and structural." I outlined my proposal, I would personally lead a rescue team for the Jensen contract, implementing an accelerated recovery plan I had developed based on my knowledge of the project. Cornerstone would provide consulting services at cost to support the effort. In exchange, Patterson Construction would undergo complete restructuring. Travis will resign from all positions and relinquish ownership shares equivalent to the embezzled amount which will be used to repay misappropriated funds. I continued. My mother's original intent of equal ownership between siblings will be honored through proper distribution of shares, and moving forward, Patterson Construction will be divided into two distinct divisions. I explained my vision for splitting the company. Travis would retain ownership interest, but no operational control in the traditional construction division, working under board supervision with strict financial oversight. I would lead and hold majority ownership in a new innovation division focused on sustainable construction methods, advanced materials, and the modular systems I had developed. This solution accomplishes multiple objectives, I concluded. It saves the company and the Jensen contract. It prevents criminal prosecution that would destroy Patterson Construction entirely. It honors our mother's wishes for both her children to benefit from the family business, and it creates a structure that leverages the actual strengths of both divisions going forward. My father, who had remained silent throughout, finally spoke. "You've thought of everything." "I've had a year to think," I replied simply. The board voted immediately and unanimously to accept my proposal, contingent on Travis's cooperation with financial restitution. Travis, facing the choice between my solution and potential federal prosecution, reluctantly agreed. The following weeks were among the most challenging and rewarding of my professional life. I assembled a rescue team drawing from both Patterson Construction and Cornerstone talent. We established a war room for the Jensen contract, working around the clock to develop realistic recovery schedules, quality remediation plans, and transparent communication protocols with the Government Oversight Committee. Travis, under my insistence, publicly accepted responsibility for the project failures, without implicating the company in his personal financial misconduct. My father, finally confronting the full extent of his son's actions and his own misjudgment, stepped into a background advisory role, allowing me full authority to implement the restructuring. By day 20 of our 30-day default notice, government inspectors had acknowledged sufficient progress to extend the remedy period. By day 45, we were back on a realistic schedule with quality metrics meeting or exceeding contract specifications. By day 90, the Jensen contract was officially back in good standing. The company restructuring proceeded in parallel. My legal challenge based on my mother's will was settled out of court, resulting in appropriate redistribution of ownership shares. The new innovation division, Patterson Cornerstone, was established with me as president and majority owner, while the traditional construction division continued under board oversight with Travis as a monitored shareholder. Most importantly, I implemented structural changes to ensure no single person could ever again damage the company through nepotism or entitlement. We established an employee ownership program, giving long-term team members equity stakes. We created transparency in succession planning and leadership development. We built systems that valued contribution over connection, competence over confidence. The transformation wasn't without pain. Some longtime employees couldn't adjust to the new accountability standards. Some projects had to be renegotiated or even canceled to create a sustainable path forward. My relationship with my father remained complicated, a mix of professional respect, personal caution, and the slow rebuilding of damaged trust. Travis faced the most difficult adjustment. Stripped of unearned authority and subjected to actual performance expectations for the first time, he initially floundered. But something unexpected emerged from his public, humbling, genuine effort. Without the protection of nepotism, he began developing skills he had previously ignored, starting with basic project management and gradually expanding his legitimate contributions. "I never really had a chance to fail," he admitted during a rare moment of vulnerability 6 months into our new structure. "Dad always fixed everything, or had you fix it. I never had to face consequences." And now I asked. Now I know what I actually can and can't do. It's terrifying, but also clarifying. This wasn't instant redemption. Travis had years of restitution ahead, both financial and professional, but it was the beginning of a path toward earning the respect he had previously been granted without merit. 1 year after implementing the restructuring, both divisions of the newly organized company were thriving. Patterson Construction had rebuilt its reputation for reliability under proper management. Patterson Cornerstone was revolutionizing the industry with sustainable construction methods, with 3 new patents under development and projects spanning 5 states. My personal life flourished in parallel with professional success. David and I rebuilt our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect and balanced priorities. I maintained actual working hours that allowed for friendships, hobbies, and eventually the family my father had always assumed would pull me away from the business. On the anniversary of the restructuring, we held a company-wide celebration acknowledging both the challenges overcome and the opportunities ahead. Standing at the podium where my father had once handed everything to Travis, I looked out at the faces of people whose livelihoods had been saved and strengthened by confronting difficult truths. The most important foundation in construction isn't concrete, I told them. It's integrity. Buildings stand or fall based on the integrity of their design materials and execution. Companies rise or fall the same way. A year ago, we rebuilt our foundation. Today, we're seeing the structure that can rise from that honest beginning. My father approached afterward more the man I remembered from childhood than the one who had betrayed my trust a year earlier. "Your mother would be proud," he said simply. "She always saw you clearly, even when I didn't." It wasn't a complete apology, but from a man of his generation and temperament, it was significant acknowledgement. I accepted it as one more step in a continuing journey of reconciliation. The greatest satisfaction, however, came from the culture we created throughout both divisions of the company. Young professionals, particularly women in the male-dominated construction industry, found mentorship and advancement opportunities based purely on merit. Innovative ideas received support regardless of their source. Success was measured not just in profit margins, but in sustainability, employee satisfaction, and community impact. This is the legacy I now focus on, building one that measures worth by contribution rather than position, that rewards genuine effort rather than entitlement, that creates structures designed to elevate everyone involved rather than enriching a chosen few. Walking away from injustice was only the first step. The true triumph came in returning with the power to transform that injustice into something better than what had existed before. Not through revenge or retaliation, but through reimagining what was possible when merit finally received its due recognition. What would you have done in my position? Would you have walked away, completely fought from the beginning, or taken a different approach entirely? Comment below with your thoughts. And if you found value in this story about standing up for yourself while creating something better, please like this video, subscribe to hear more journeys of transformation, and share with someone who might need encouragement to value their own worth. Thank you for coming along on this journey with me. May you recognize your own value and build something worthy of it.